What went through your mind when you first was told or first heard about the proposed budget from Governor Corbett?
What was my first reaction?
Yeah.
Where's my car? I want to go home. How's that? No, well, it was certainly unexpected. We were, thinking that the governor's recommendation would be about a 10% reduction in funding, and so the 50% was, I think, more than a surprise for sure. And right now we're working with the Chancellor's office and the system to work with the legislature to try to get that change to back in a much more favorable position for not just for IUP but for the state system as a whole.
What's the progress on that?
Well, I mean, those conversations are really first starting. We've met with some of the local representatives. The Chancellor appears before the Senate Appropriations Committee later this week. There'll be an appearance before the House Appropriations Committee by the Chancellor. There's individual conversations going on with legislators. There's going to be an advocacy day in which students from IUP and from the other system schools are in Harrisburg on April 4th and 5th to talk about how they're counting on the universities to provide the kind of programs that we offer for them to be successes in their lives. That's really what it's about. The focus is on the impact this would have on students and their ability to finish their degrees in a timely way and get on about their lives and be productive citizens for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
You said you talked to some representatives, local representatives, so far. Mm-hmm. What have they said about the proposal?
Well, they were surprised as well about the extent of the governor's recommendation, and I think they're going to be working to improve what comes out of the legislature compared to what the governor has initially recommended.
What do you think will be the, consequences if this would all pass? We don't want that, but what do you think could possibly happen to the state system or its IEP? What do you think the ramifications could be?
Well, if this were to, if we were to have that level of reduction in state funding, it would mean pretty dramatic changes at the university. We would have to, we're talking, we got to go back and put this in context. The state funding is about, the government funding we get is about 33% of our total operating budget for what's called the E&G budget, the budget that's used for educational purposes, not the housing budget, which is a whole separate matter. But government funding is about 33% of that. Well, part of that is the federal stimulus money that we had for the last couple of years that's going away. So that money is going away. That would knock it down to about 28% of the state funding. So of the government funding. So if the governor's recommendation would come to pass, that remaining 28% would be cut in half, and we'd be down to about 14% of our funding coming from the state. We would be losing about $30 million. Well, $30 million is a lot of money, and that would have a dramatic impact on our ability to offer classes, to provide access for students. And that's, even though our budget is about $170 million, it's not a cut of the total budget. It's a cut of the part that comes from state government.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, it's a very large amount of money.
So you'd be losing out of $170 million, a possible $30 million.
That's correct. Right.
So
in rough numbers.
Yeah, rough
numbers.
numbers.
Right.
Rough estimates. You were working with about $140 million for the school.
Well, that's correct. Yes, roughly that would be exactly.
Do you think that rough estimate is enough to get IEP through the year? What?
Well, we would have to. I think if that were to happen, the Board of Governors would be taking a hard look at what the tuition rate would be. Right now, historically, for the last 5 or so years that I'm familiar with, the tuition increases where the governors have approved have been quite modest. They've been either just a little above or even below the rate of inflation. So they've done a very good job of holding down tuition for students. And, I can't, predict what they would do, but one of the things they would have to do is to take a look at to what extent they could raise tuition. And they're clearly not going to raise tuition to a level that would, recoup all of those dollars, but that would be one of the strategies that we would be looked at. And then we would have to look to see how we could get by next year with under those dire circumstances. And we haven't done the planning at that level. The planning to this point has been the expectation of the loss of the federal stimulus dollars, a 10% reduction in state funding, and a number of other assumptions that underlie it. And we've done that planning, and most of that work has been done. This would present a whole new challenge that we really haven't addressed yet at this point. We're not going to panic into doing something. We want to see what's going to come out of the legislative process before we do that.
How much planning, not necessarily panic, but how much planning has come about this proposal? You have something in place that in the event this happens, what's in place after that?
Well, no. I mean, our planning to this point had been predicated upon the loss of the stimulus funding, a 10% cut in state funding, a very small tuition increase, and then taking in some consideration some uncontrollable cost increases. For example, we know that utility costs are going to go up because we know something about utility rates. Those kinds of things, we knew that we could expect about a $10 million, we would have to plan for about a $10 million less expenditures for next year than we were planning than we are spending this year. We have not really done the planning at this point for a cut in expenditures beyond that $10 million level. And if we have to do that, we will do that, but that has not been done to this point.
You sent the email out, when this was announced. What made you want to send that email out? Just get the message out to those people so they know what's going on?
Well, yeah, I think it's important that faculty, staff, and students understand what's going on. There's I think people have a right to know that, and part of my job is to keep people informed about what's going on in the university. It was also so that when they're informed, people can make decisions about what they want to do and get their help in assisting the university to the extent that they can. And our students are citizens, for the most part, citizens of the Commonwealth, and making their voices known to their legislators, both the ones here locally and the ones that are in the districts in which they live, is part of their responsibility as a citizen of the Commonwealth, and we want them to be having their voices heard. 50%.
Do you yourself see any positives coming out of this possible proposal?
It's hard to find a positive in a 50% reduction. No, I don't see any positives there. I think there have been some positives in the planning process that's gone on to this point. In one of the things that this planning for the $10 million has meant is that we've taken a very close look at what the university's engaged in. And that, I think, is always a healthy process. And in doing that, trying to focus on what our first priorities are. And our first priorities are serving our students, we have many priorities, but that is the overarching priority of providing access to the students.